Good morning, everybody. Good morning. Good morning. What is going on? What is going on? Wednesday, January 28th, 8 a.m. Cheers to you. Thank you for being a part of the show. Thank you for coming on the channel every single morning. Early one today for the Lakers. By the way, thank you for supporting the channel. Thank you for subscribing to the channel. Thank you for being a member, however the hell you get here. Thank you for coming on every morning. We'll do a post-game show tonight after the Lakers play the Cleveland Cavaliers. So that'll be a fun game to kind of get into. By the way, 4 p.m. tip-off. I'm down for 4 p.m. tip-offs. I don't know how you guys do it. Anybody that listens from the East Coast, I got no idea how any of you guys do it. I'll take a 4 p.m. tip-off, finish my post-game show by 7:30, 8 o'clock, and then call it a day. Cheers to you this morning. Cheers to you. Got some comments, thoughts you want to put in, please feel free to put it in the comments. I'm going to get through my rundown here real quick. It's always on the opposite side that I can see on the screen. As soon as I get through that, we'll get the show started. We'll put in the comments something a little bit unique today. We do have an interview today, so we'll spend, but this one will be a little bit different. All right, let me give everyone a quick idea of what we got going on for the show today. Good test tonight. Good test tonight. Somebody's going to put, see, is it a barometer game? Yeah, it might be a barometer game. Not really, to be honest with you. Evan Mobley and Darius Garland aren't playing, so not exactly a barometer game. Lakers got the Cavs tonight, so we'll talk a little bit about the game. I got some sound that I want to play. I think this is what happens in media, and this is what happens in sports. The Lakers lose a couple of games, they're screwed. The organization is done. The Lakers win a couple of games. Watch out, they're coming out of the Western Conference. I'm going to play a clip from Kendrick Perkins that talking about the Lakers versus some of the other elite teams in the Western Conference. Can they compete with the elite? I still got to see a lot more. I don't know how you guys feel. Nice little stretch for the Lakers. It doesn't really change my opinion of whether I think they're a true contender out of the Western Conference. So we'll spend a little bit of time on that. LeBron returning as a Cav. Listen, Lakers are obviously playing the Cavaliers. I got kind of a perfect scenario. I don't know if LeBron wants this. I don't know what Laker fans want this. But I got a scenario after this year that I want to play out for everybody, and maybe a way for LeBron James to kind of get a little bit of everything he was looking for, but find a way to end his career with the team that he started with. We'll get into that. Bob Schmidt, who covers the Cleveland Cavaliers, does a podcast on the Cavs called Fear the Fro. That's the interview I'm doing. So I'm going to give everyone a quick heads up on that. I recorded that interview last night. So I've never really actually been able to kind of record an interview and then play it. But what I'm going to do is I'm probably going to play the interview about 8:15-ish or so. I'll play the interview. It will be a preview to the game tonight. We'll talk LeBron, his future. Do Cavs want him back if he wanted to come back? We'll do that, and then I'll come back on after the interview is done, and we'll do our NBA news, answer all the questions you guys got, and go from there. Look at some of the comments. Dalton Knecht, could he be getting a fresh start? I know there are a couple articles that are out there right now talking about maybe an opportunity for Dalton Knecht at this trade deadline to get a new opportunity, play in a different place, and see what he can do. And I think everybody, I don't think there's a Laker fan out there that doesn't want to see Dalton Knecht get a fresh start and would not lose any sleep if they lost Dalton Knecht on this team. Couple stuff around the NBA that we'll do as well. Jayson Tatum talked a little bit about potentially returning back and kind of some of the different things that he's evaluating, and then we will call it a day. So thank you for being here. Appreciate you guys being a part of the show. Let's get a couple of comments in here before the show gets started, and then we'll go from there. Let's see what people got here. Lakers winning today. Okay. It's an even game because we're missing Austin. Mobley and Garland are key pieces for them. And I will tell you that the Lakers they've had a little bit of a head start here in regards to playing without Austin Reeves. I think Garland's been out, but I think Evan Mobley just recently is out. So they've been winning games. They've been doing it with Evan Mobley. I know he's been elite. Part of that has to do with my conversation with Bob Schmidt. You guys will hear in just a little bit. All right, let's get a couple more in here. Morning, Slee. Good morning to you. Dalton is already lost. Can I tell you something about Dalton Knecht? We have not had a conversation about Dalton Knecht in a while. So that kind of tells you how most people think about Dalton Knecht. He hasn't even been a conversation. I mean, nobody's even kind of going out of their way to say, man, what happened to Dalton Knecht? How come he and this? I mean, this is without Austin Reeves. There was a point Gabe Vincent wasn't playing, and Dalton Knecht still couldn't figure it out. And that kind of tells you about his time with the Lakers. Okay, appreciate some of the comments there. Let's get the show started. Like I said, because we have a guest, the show is really going to fly by today, partially because I already interviewed the guest, so we'll play that here in a few minutes. All right, so Lakers and the Cavs tonight. Just something to kind of keep in mind here. Cleveland's playing a lot better than they were before. So I know for me, a lot of walking into this season, I'm like, hey, I already know who's going to be in the Eastern Conference Finals. It's going to be the Cavs and the Knicks. And if it's not the Cavs and the Knicks, then one of those teams just had a colossal failure this year. Well, not only is it not the Cavs and the Knicks at the 1-2 spot, if the playoffs started today, it would be Cavs and the Knicks in the first round. It'd be a 4-5 matchup. But Cavs are playing a lot better. They're 28-20, so 8 games over 500, 4-game winning streak, 7-3 in their last 10 games. So tonight's going to be a nice little challenge for the Lakers. And I think they've been a little bit fortunate, right? They've had a couple of opportunities here over the course of the last couple of weeks where maybe Toronto wasn't fully healthy, or Denver's not fully healthy. I look back, Chicago was basically for the most part healthy. I mean, they had most of their guys, but some of these wins that the Lakers have had, Kawhi is on a minutes restriction. You can make an argument here. I mean, I don't think it's wrong to do so, but I think you can make the argument. All right, did some of these teams that the Lakers are playing, A, they're not elite. They're not the most elite teams in the NBA. And B, Lakers have been kind of fortunate, and they get a little bit of a break today because Mobley's not there and Darius Garland's not there. I know Max Strus isn't there. So they're missing some of their key players, but that's not something that the Lakers, there's nothing they could do about that. So, if I'm being honest with you, yes, I'd love to see other teams be 100% healthy. I'd love to see the Lakers be 100% healthy. That's just not how the league works. That's not how the NBA works. So what you're going to try to do is try to take advantage of whoever's in front of you. And obviously for the Lakers tonight, they'll have the Cavs in front of them. They'll do the best they can to try to take advantage of the matchup, but it won't be easy. Cavs are going to be it's going to be a fun game tonight. I actually really think it's going to be a fun game. Donovan Mitchell is one of my favorite players to watch in the NBA when he's got it going. He's one of the more elite players. All right, he's not top 5, top 10, but Donovan Mitchell is a phenomenal player to watch, maybe top 20, something along those lines. So it's going to be fun to see how the Lakers kind of adjust. And the Lakers got a little bit of momentum right now. I think it's been fair to say, and I've kind of pointed out some of this stuff. All of a sudden, you're looking at this team and you're like, hey, Rui Hachimura off the Lakers bench. That's not a terrible idea. JJ Redick challenging the stars and basically tell them, pass the ball more. And I think Luka and LeBron have answered that call. You got guys like Vando, guys like Marcus Smart, guys like Jackson Hayes that are bringing a certain energy to this Lakers team. It's been a fun couple of weeks of Lakers basketball. And I think the Lakers have kind of gone through these chapters this season where sometimes we're watching the Lake Show and they're completely frustrating. There's times where you're like, this team ain't going anywhere. And then there's times where I'll just use as an example, there's glimpses of hope of like, maybe things can kind of turn around for the Lakers. Maybe they can be a headache if they get into the playoffs. Maybe Austin Reeves is going to add an element that now all of a sudden this Lakers team is clicking and we'll see what they do, starting lineups and everything else. That's kind of where we are with the Lakers. I think 11 games over 500 is a good record. I think the Lakers certainly have put themselves in a good position to, if they do make a trade at the trade deadline, we'll talk trade deadline a little bit later. Obviously, they're going to be able to address some of their needs that they have. It's kind of an interesting team. Again, do I think they're elite? No. Do I still think there's a lot that needs to be proven? Sure. But good couple of weeks for the Lakers. That's all you can really ask for. They've won 4 of their last 5 games. So I'm gonna bring this up because ESPN, I think it was yesterday. I want to play this clip here. Kendrick Perkins. I'm going to play the clip and then I want to react to it afterwards. And I think you guys might notice here, I've been trying to play a little bit more from a clip perspective. And, obviously, I think these are good to play. But Kendrick Perkins was on First Take yesterday. I think it was First Take that he was on. And he's talking about the Lakers. And The conversation was more about, are the Lakers, are they starting to make a little bit of a case to be legit title contenders? I'm going to give you my answer. The answer is no. I don't think the Lakers have done anything for me, even though they've been playing better basketball, winning 4 of their last 5 games. It's just not a long enough sample size. And frankly, some of the teams that they're beating, I think it would be a wild overreaction to say to yourself, oh, okay, they can actually now beat some of these elite teams. I think the better question is, can they make a series against one of these elite teams? If they played Denver in a 7-game set, or if they played San Antonio in a 7-game set, if they played Houston in a 7-game set, I'm going to leave the Thunder kind of to themselves right now, even though the Thunder have been a little bit up and down. But nothing to me has happened where I all of a sudden think now they're one of the top 3, top 4 teams in the Western Conference, because there's nothing to make me think otherwise. They can have stars like Luka. They can have one of the best players in the world. But until you see a real 1 month of good basketball, decent, consistent defense, guys that understand their roles, and an identity for this Lakers team, I ain't going to overreact. But let me just play this from Kendrick Perkins giving his thoughts on the Lakers, and him basically making an argument that they're not as far as maybe some people think. Take a listen.
Not far off. Do I have them picked to win the West? No, I don't. I can't put them above OKC, Denver, or the Spurs, but they're knocking at the door. Let me say this. Luka Doncic is one of the greatest offensive players this game has ever seen. The Lakers could score and put up points with any team in the NBA. The problem is that when you talk about winning championships or being a legit title contender, it got to go to the other end. Now, has Luka stepped it up defensively? Has the Lakers been better defensively? Absolutely. But I got to look at a guy like DeAndre Ayton right now, and that's the only problem that I have. I feel like they're a big man away, a Daniel Gafford player away from actually being legit. Because the way DeAndre Ayton has been looking of late, I can't roll with the Lakers solely because he's a guy that's not playing with force. Forget not being a real legitimate offensive threat far as being a lob threat at the basket. Defensively, those numbers, those double-doubles that he may put up occasionally is fool's gold. And I just think that they need to make a move at the trade deadline and get athletically at the big position. If they could get a big like a Daniel Gafford, they could compete with the best of them.
Okay, so there's 2 things I take away from Kendrick. I should have set that up a little bit better because I know the Ayton piece was going to be a part of that. But let me just say this. Let's go to the first part. I think Kendrick kind of contradicts himself there. That, hey, I think they're a player away, and look at what Luka can do offensively and this and that, and then says, but they can't play defense on a consistent basis. That in itself takes the Lakers out of, I think, true title competition or to be in that conversation with some of these other elite teams. Now, his point about Ayton, the problem is how are you going to orchestrate something like that? I've talked about it in a pretty decent amount on this channel, and I think my expectations just keep kind of going down on DeAndre. My expectations of what you think he can deliver on a night in, night out basis, what you're hoping for from DeAndre, and I think that's taking its steep decline. And I don't think he's wrong on the Ayton piece. I just think to try to get one of the players that he's talking about, that ain't happening. And it probably is not happening until the summer if the Lakers are able to do so. And listen, maybe their target changes at the trade deadline, and maybe there is a little bit more of a push that the Lakers, instead of going after a player like a 3-and-D player, maybe they are going after a big. And some of that is the kind of the disappointing piece. What has frustrated a lot of Laker fans is Ayton hasn't been the player that, just a more consistent player. Nobody thought the Lakers were getting Hakeem Olajuwon. Nobody thought the Lakers were getting Shaq. Nobody thought the Lakers were getting Patrick Ewing. But all the Lakers, I think all anybody was looking for is, can you just have a motor? Can you have some energy on a night in, night out basis? Can you show up? I see where Kendrick Perkins is going. I just don't think that could be accomplished at this trade deadline. But the question about, can they compete with the elite? I don't think we have that answer yet. I really don't. I mean, give me a stretch where you're playing against teams that are healthy, playing against teams where their stars are there, and give me a stretch where the Lakers are like, wow, they've won 4 of their last 5 games, all against teams over 500, all teams they could potentially face in the NBA playoffs, in the Western Conference, right? Give me hey, they just beat Minnesota, Denver, and San Antonio in this month of March, just making up stuff. I don't even know if they play all those teams. And then it's like, okay, maybe then that's a different conversation. But for now, I'm just going to try to enjoy the Lakers getting a little bit more back on track, probably feeling good about themselves. They've won 3 of their first 4 games on this road trip. They got 4 more games to go. And that's all I really kind of look at. I don't look at it any further than that. They got flaws on the roster. We all know that and understand it. But the Lakers are definitely playing a little bit better. Okay. I want to start taking a look at some of the comments. And I'm going to probably do this a little bit different. I'm going to have the LeBron retiring as a Cav. I'm going to do that conversation after my interview with Bob Schmidt. But for now, I do want to read a couple of comments, see what people are saying here on the chat, and get your guys' thoughts and opinion on our first topic and what Kendrick Perkins had to say. Before I do so, let's give a quick shout out here. Harrah's Resort SoCal. Everybody knows here. Official casino resort of the channel. A great, great partner. This is an awesome partnership that I was able to help create with the help of iHeart, the help of AM 570. I do these Laker reports every single morning that air on AM 570. Harris is sponsoring that, and here they are sponsoring the show as well. I'm there coming up tomorrow. I'm going to be at Hell's Kitchen, which I think is one of the best restaurants in all of Southern California. It's Gordon Ramsay's Hell's Kitchen. I'm going to stay there for 2 nights. So I'll be putting out some video with me over at Harrah's. I can't wait. HarrahSoCal.com to book your next getaway. They are located anywhere between an hour and 2 hours, depending on where you are in SoCal, in North San Diego in the Palomar Mountains. It's a beautiful resort. It's a very, very smart way to go on a vacation or go on a staycation. It's a lot more economically. It makes a lot more economic sense. You don't have to go pay for a round trip ticket somewhere. How many people from the family are going? Drive down there. Beautiful place, luxurious rooms, beautiful pools. And trust me, you'll love it. HarrahSoCal.com. Plan your next getaway at HarrahSoCal.com. Okay, let me read a couple of the comments here, and then we're going to start this interview here shortly. All right, let's see what people got to say. Let's see what people have to say here. What are they saying? Ayton stuff is out of control. Do you all remember the playoffs last year? F consistency. He's 7 foot and a body. We didn't have the potential outweighs the negative. Yeah, here's the problem. Is anybody think you could depend on DeAndre Ayton? And I'm not 100% sure if the argument you're trying to make is, yeah, Ayton's a much better upgrade than last year, or if you're trying to say, yeah, Ayton isn't doing anything. The biggest problem with Ayton is, I mean, for me, it's more these last couple of weeks. I was talking about his last 5 games. I've spent a little bit of time on that. His numbers are just like this. And it looks like JJ Redick has a shorter and shorter leash for him, I guess you can say, in regards to he makes a mistake. He's like, I'm going to Jackson Hayes. He makes a mistake. He's like, I got to get him out of the game. That tells you something. That's not, a coach that's confident in their player. That's not what they're doing. A coach that's confident in their player is like, I'm going to leave this guy here. I'm going to let him do his thing. No problem. We'll figure it out. That's not really the case so far with DeAndre Ayton. All right, let's get him more. Come on, all our problems now are Ayton. Seriously? No, I don't think anybody's saying all their problems are Ayton. Ayton is one of the problems. Ayton is one of the problems. They got other issues too, but Ayton is becoming an issue. And that's just the reality of him. I mean, you could pretend like it's not. No, Ayton is definitely one of the problems. He is, based on what they were kind of hoping to get out of him this year. Gafford is the formula to compete for a title. Not just Gafford, but players like that. Yes, I think there's definitely a little bit more of if you can get players like Gafford, and it probably ain't going to happen until the summer. Yeah, those are the types of players that you want when you're trying to make a real run with Luka Doncic and you're trying to build around Luka. Ayton is worth the $8 million LA is paying him. Yeah, might be able to say that because that's exactly what they're paying him. Okay, here's what I want to do. Let me see what we have here. I want to make sure that I read. Did I get to some of these supers here? Pull up last year's schedule, 115 to 3-6, deja vu. Lakers started balling last year. So if that's what you're referring to, then maybe that's what you're talking about from that perspective. Thank you, John, for the super here. Emchi, let me get him in here. Time to say our goodbyes to DeAndre. Ain't it? Well, I see some people trying to throw him into trade scenarios. I don't think he's going to be traded. I don't know how many teams are going to see value in him. So, to be honest with you, I think he's going to be a Laker probably through the end of the year. So, something to keep in mind in regards to that. Okay, like I mentioned, so this one's going to be a little bit different. This is kind of a little bit different of a wrinkle. Lakers got the Cavs coming up tonight. Yesterday, I recorded kind of late last night, just because he was going to be traveling. Somebody saying Shams just tweeted Giannis wants out. I'll come back to that towards the end of the show. So real quick here, Bob Schmidt, who does a Cavs podcast, Fear the Fro. I did an interview with him last night. We're going to preview the Lakers and the Cavs. We're going to talk a little bit about the Eastern Conference. We're going to talk a little bit about would LeBron James want, like I mentioned from this perspective, would LeBron James consider retiring as a Cleveland Cavalier? Let's play this interview. When we come back, I'm going to do NBA news, and then we'll get into this Giannis stuff as well that I'm seeing right now as well. Take a listen. A little bit later today, so obviously that should be a fun matchup, and we got a guest, an expert, I would like to say, on the Cleveland Cavaliers. I want to welcome in Bob Schmidt, does a Cavs podcast, Fear, right out the gate, just coming in hard. Bob, I appreciate the time. I know it's the first time we've had you on the show, but very, very much appreciative of your time.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Alan. I'm excited to be on.
All right, so I'm trying to think here. Where do we start here? I can start in so many different directions. I've said this before. Lakers had a game earlier, about a week and a half ago, 2 weeks ago, and I had somebody that came on that represented the Denver Nuggets. And Denver, I was like, my mind was spinning. I didn't know where to start. The injuries and how good are they when they are healthy, and when Jokic comes back. The Cavs, I got this like weird, mysterious fascination with, because there always seems to be some ties with the Lakers because of LeBron. I thought, here's a guy that preseason was like, hey, it's going to be Cavs and Knicks, number 1 and number 2 in the Eastern Conference. And here they are 4 and 5. For most of us that have not got a chance to watch the Cavs this year, or we don't, obviously see them on a night in, night out basis like you do. What can Laker fans expect tomorrow? Just what is it that some of the strengths of the Cavs, some of the weaknesses of the Cavs? Would love a little bit of a background.
Well, this month has been different in the sense that, so the Cavaliers started very slow. They had a decent first month, but they really kind of tailed off in December. This month, though, outside of the Clippers, they're the hottest team in basketball. They've won 11 of the last 15. They've won 4 in a row. The big news today, though, is that Mobley will not be playing because of the calf strain. So, but heading into this stretch here, one of the big trends since basically the last real blemish, I would say, the Houston loss was ugly. And the OKC loss was ugly too, but even that was a 30-point loss that really was basically a 15-point loss where they were making everything. And Dort and Isaiah Joe were just crushing them. And it was they got outclassed by Oklahoma City, but barring that game in January, it's been a lot of them playing a lot better defensively. Over the last couple of weeks, their defense is a top 5 defense. The offense, without Darius Garland, that's been a sore point in the past, because when he's been hampered, and you look back at that playoff series with Indiana, that was probably the biggest single reason why they got bounced out of the playoffs, was that with that turf toe that Garland was playing with, he was 3 of 18 from outside the arc on the series. It was just, it impacted him in a way where we haven't been able to consistently get our offense to flow when he's been out of it. For as great as Donovan Mitchell is, he's not as good at getting the bigs involved as a guy like Darius Garland is. But in this stretch,
more of a natural point guard, Garland.
Yeah. I mean, and I will say Mitchell has taken steps in this month of January where finally he and an uptick in the assists coming from Mobley's position. Mobley has had his best month since he's been in the NBA in terms of creating for others. So those two things, coupled with the fact that despite not having Garland or Merrill or Max Strus, your shooters out there, what that's forced the Cavs to do is turn to a starting lineup recently that's featured Dean Wade and Jalen Tyson. And for what that may detract from offensively, it's just made the Cavs a much better defensive team and rebounding in general. So Kenny Atkinson is a coach who seems to like small ball, but due to the fact that the Cavs have constantly been juggling lineups with all these injuries that they've dealt with lately, the guys who have been healthy, it's skewed big. It's skewed to Jared Allen finally starting to close games. It's skewed to Naquan Tomlin climbing up the ranks because Larry Nance Jr. had been out for a while, and he's a very physical, defensive-oriented player. Jalen Tyson, who's one of the best rebounders from that 2-3 position in the NBA, and then Dean Wade, who's a fantastic defender, even though he isn't much in the way of an offensive contributor. So I think that's been going really well because it leads to a more gritty style that you're just not used to seeing from the Cavs. Last year, it was a lot of ball movement and, drive, swing, threes. The threes have regressed from a lot of places this year, but what's really ratcheted up in the last month is the defensive intensity. So
yeah, it's interesting. I mean, for the Lakers, it's kind of they've gone through a stretch here, and it's not. I'm not trying to make a case here. It's this huge sample size because it's not. But they've won 4 of their last 5 games, and the only reason why they've won 4 of their last 5 games, all of a sudden there's a little bit of, hey, we can get a stop every once in a while. So I think maybe similar to the Cavs, where they've had some success because they have a little bit more of a defensive identity. For the Lakers, you're seeing the Vandos and the Marcus Smarts and Jake LaRavias, kind of random guys, right? Like not guys that you would think are going to get heavy minutes, but they've been able to get stops. And now all of a sudden they have moments where Luka can go off like he did yesterday or a couple days ago now for 46, but you can still have players that can impact the game because they can get some defensive stops. Okay, so no Mobley tomorrow or no Mobley tonight. And no Darius Garland tonight. Let me focus, I guess, a little bit more on just those 2 players. Without those 2 players, how much different is it going to look?
Well, Mobley's been playing fantastic. In the last 15 games here, outside of Chet Holmgren, he's had the most blocks. His defenses look like the defensive player there. He's had 38 blocks in 15 games or something like that. So that part really, to me, has been what's changed completely. I thought he came out of the gates this season and he didn't look nearly as dominant defensively as he did last year. But towards the end of December and all through this month, he has imposed his will on that side of the court. And that coupled with a few offensive explosion games mixed in here. It's not every night. I mean, there are nights where it's still a struggle a lot of times for him to get 20 shots. But I think that's been the difference is that where we've missed Darius Garland, both Donovan Mitchell and Mobley have stepped up in terms of creating for themselves and others enough so that it's kept the offense flowing. And then we're getting just ridiculous contributions out of Jalen Tyson. A lot of the conversation in the last week has been, he made this Rising Stars game, but there's been a lot of conversation about, okay, should he be a viable person for the Most Improved Player award? And it typically will never be considered for second-year guys, especially a guy who really wasn't in the rotation last year. But the leaps he's made, just statistically speaking, have been ridiculous. I mean, on a night-to-night basis, in the absence of these guys, he'll consistently step in and give you, 15, 5, and 5. And good play on both sides of the court. Up until he had a 1 of 9 3-point game a couple games ago, but up until that point, he was second in the league in 3-point shooting at 47.5% to Bobby Portis. That was the only guy ahead of him, and he was 0.1% ahead of him. Now he's third. He's only fallen to third. But to get that out of a guy who wasn't even a factor last year has gone a long way to kind of cover up the fact that, because you mentioned Garland and Mobley, but also Merrill is likely not playing, and then Strus has been out. So that's a lot of 3-point shooting you're leaving out of the rotation. So to get Jalen to come in and do as well as he's done in that regard has been huge for this Cavs team.
Lakers might be a little fortunate with, some of those injuries. I mean, obviously wish Cavs were healthy, but that's kind of been, it seems like you look around the entire NBA and there's some key players missing from every team. Obviously the Lakers have had Reeves out for a while. They got Rui Hachimura back recently, and he's been really, really good for them these last couple of games coming off the bench. Big picture for the Cavs. What is this year for Cleveland? If they flame out and, things don't go, I guess you can answer this question. What's a successful season where they could say, hey, run it back? And what's a season where people are saying they got some major changes that they're going to have to make?
I suppose this is contingent on the opponent. I guess there's a world in which a second-round exit could be acceptable if it was a great enough opponent. But then the questions would be, why did you find yourself?
And even right now, if the playoffs started, it's Knicks Cavs, isn't it?
Well, 4-5, right? Yeah, I believe that would be the case. So
I just say that because how interesting would that be? I mean, for one of those two teams, it's like you're burning the house down. I mean, I don't know what you're going to do if one of those teams are out.
I will say I feel good because of where we're at right now. Like, one of the things is that people just don't realize, because the Cavs had such high expectations after last season, is that, they've got 16 wins against 500 or better squads, which is equivalent to San Antonio, Oklahoma City. Like, they're amongst the best teams in the league when it comes. The problem has been they'll lose to the Jazz on a random night. And those type of things are the stuff that, this month, it's been a harsh backslide for the Knicks. And I think Cavs fans feel like we're in a pretty good spot, because the other thing that everybody would tell you is 64 wins was great, but we had nobody injured. Jared Allen played 82 games. That was the healthiest season I've ever seen in my fandom of Cavalier basketball, at least as far as the frontline guys go. Max Strus missed like the first half of the season, but as far as the true core four guys, they were ridiculously healthy. This is much more reminiscent of what every team deals with every year, seemingly. We haven't had the injury bug hit us until the playoffs every year. This year, it's happening now, and I actually think it's useful because they've got two-way guys and Tomlin making contributions. Tyson, they didn't even know what his role would be. And now, because Max Strus has been out this whole time, it's allowed him to really solidify his spot in a place where, but back to your question, let's say the Cavs flame out horribly in the playoffs. I think at that point, you'll be looking at changes, but those changes would be more palatable because the high-priced guys, like your $23 million for DeAndre Hunter, like take your 10 for Lonzo, even. That's an option, a team option next year. Some of these guys that Max Strus who's 15, 16 million, those guys become far less critical when the system underneath them has shown that we've got these guys on rookie deals in Craig Porter Jr. Tyrese Proctor looks really good. Craig Porter Jr. has been great. And then Naquan Tomlin, who isn't even yet on a guaranteed NBA contract. To have those guys emerge in the way that they have, this season hasn't been perfect, but what it has done is it's made me feel like if the Cavs don't get to the Eastern Conference Finals, if they implode spectacularly in the playoffs, I would be able to stomach, a bloodletting of sorts a lot better. If they decide we've got to get out of the second apron, we need to just dump salary and not get talent back in return. Well, if you had told me, okay, we're going to get rid of DeAndre Hunter at the start of this season, I would have said, well, why did you trade for him at the trade deadline last year? But now I look at it and I say, well, you know what? Naquan Tomlin has shown some things. I feel better about it today than I would have in September or October. Now, hopefully, you've got a 2-year runway. Really, what every Cav fan would tell you is that Donovan Mitchell's player option in the summer of 2027 it's a natural exit point if you haven't achieved your goals by that point, because you'll be staring at one of those Devin Booker extensions that if you haven't done what you were going to do after 2 straight years of existing deep in the second apron with a group of talent that they have, you're probably never doing it. And at that point you're up against not only are your picks frozen, but they're going to start sliding to the back of the first round. So at that point, I think that's when everyone would tell you, you've got a year and a half at best. And if the playoffs go bad this season, you're probably looking at some kind of shakeup amongst that core 4 group.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of Donovan Mitchell, but it reminds me a little bit. We used to watch Donovan Mitchell a lot more, obviously, when he was in Utah, and I guess you could say the ceiling. It reminds me a little bit of that ceiling. I don't know if it's a good comp. I'm not watching the Cavs every day, but can Donovan Mitchell be the best player on a championship quality team and take that team to the finals? Now, that means you got to have a lot of talent around him. Gobert was there. Mike Conley was there. It's not like Joe Ingles was there. It's not like they were depending just on Donovan Mitchell. But when the dust settled, it felt like Donovan Mitchell was the best player on that team. And I don't know if that's exactly replicated with the Cleveland Cavaliers, but I don't feel all that confident about if he's the best player on your team, you're going to get to the NBA Finals. You got a chance at a real finals run. We'll see what happens. I'm trying to kind of think of Donovan Mitchell. I know how talented he is, but damn, if he's your number 2, do you feel like you really have a shot at an NBA championship? I don't know if I feel that way if he's your number 1.
I think the question for Cavs fans, I think what Cavs fans would tell you is this, that specific question, can Donovan be the best player on a championship team? After 3 seasons of him balling his ass off in the playoffs, he had the most points in those 2 closeout games
Donovan's amazing. He's an amazing player. No one's questioning that.
It's not that he didn't show up. It's that is that a sustainable formula to win? So it either becomes an issue of, okay, do you blame the guys around him for not performing to the level they can in the playoffs? Or does that blame get pinned on Donovan because he pulls guys towards that heliocentric style that he plays in the postseason? The results are unimpeachable from an individual level, but it hasn't led to team success in a way where I do think there's people who question it. But then sometimes I feel like, well, are you going to put it on Donovan to take a step back, or are you going to just force the other guys to take the step forward? You know, you can't. We're deep into this Evan Mobley experiment at this point. And because he won Defensive Player of the Year, the expectations ratchet up even more because it puts his pay into that same stratosphere that Donovan Mitchell is. So at some point, maybe Donovan isn't the guy that can do it. But I think when they brought him here, that was never necessarily how they imagined it. They imagined a future where Evan Mobley would ascend to the point where he's at least viewed as a 1A, 1B. And if that doesn't happen, yeah, maybe it isn't enough. But I don't blame the all-in move at the time to try to do it, because I think everybody's, intentions at that point where you're getting Evan Mobley on the upswing. And maybe he just doesn't get to the place offensively that you would need him to get to truly push this iteration, over the finish line.
No, I like what the Cavs have done. The question now is, will that roster be able to kind of live up to some of their expectations? DeAndre Hunter, I thought the Hunter deal, when I saw that deal last year, I'm like, that's a great move. I felt like that's the right move. Now, sounds like what you're saying is maybe it hasn't worked out perfectly. I don't think it worked out in the postseason last year. So, obviously we'll see. But it's not like they're not swinging, and that's all you can really ask for, I'm sure, if you're a Cavs fan or from that fan base is, well, at least, put the effort in and let's see what happens. I think at the absolute worst, they've done that. Just a quick kind of side note here, because you mentioned Lonzo Ball, obviously a little history with the Lakers. Is just tell me, I have not got to see much of him, and is there much to talk about there, or
I'll be honest, Alan. Yeah, I think most fans just want him out of the rotation. He's been a little bit better as of late, but It started with, here's the problem with Lonzo. First of all, whether it's fair or not, he's being measured against what Ty Jerome did last year, which was third place, sixth man of the year type basketball. Ty Jerome kind of disappeared in the Pacers series for 3 of the 5 games, and fans were pissed about it. But they let him move on to Memphis, and in bringing in Lonzo, Kenny is a small ball. He wants to play small ball. The roster may not lean towards that at the moment, but he wants faster pace, get shots up quicker, jump the passing lanes, get out in the open court. And theoretically, Lonzo is great in that regard. But Lonzo couldn't hit, water from a boat in the middle of the ocean to begin this season. And on top of that, Craig Porter Jr. had been playing so well that when Lonzo finally got yanked out of the rotation, they gave him some DNP CDs towards the end of the month in December, and things just started going much, much better. Now, they've kind of spun it as, well, maybe with Lonzo's health stuff, we shouldn't have been playing him so much, because they said they were going to limit his minutes. He was playing 25 a night. And you had Craig underneath him playing 10, 15, constantly outplaying him, to the point where now I kind of look at Lonzo as like logically, I don't know how the team can pick his option up in the summer, given the role that he has now, which is kind of as a handcuff against Craig Porter Jr. or injuries that you have. Because when you're fully healthy, Sam Merrill was playing fantastic ball. Max Strus hasn't even played. Jalen Tyson looks like a guy who might lock down the 5th starter even when we're fully healthy. Where are the minutes going to be? And when you have a guy who's making $10 million versus Craig, who's making 2.5, Jalen, who's making just over 3, I think the logical thing to do is just accept the fact that in the summer, if the Cavs have to trim cost, $10 million for a guy who's maybe your 5th, 6th guard at that point it's not a tenable salary. So I'm under no expectation that the Cavaliers will pick up that option unless they're trying to roll the asset forward. But they're so deep into the second apron that it just doesn't seem realistic to me.
Okay, final one I have for you, and I like to if I'm going to have somebody on that's representing the Cleveland Cavaliers, I would like to at least throw in a couple wild ones, maybe a couple conspiracy theories, maybe throw in what I think could potentially happen moving forward with the Cavs, and it might be connected with someone named LeBron James. So let me give you the temperature of a Laker fan that is watching the Lakers, and there's a 41-year-old that's still doing amazing things, but you got this 26-year-old, and you're like, hey, we got to start really building around Luka. There's $52 million going to LeBron James. Is this his final year? What are Lakers going to do? All that obviously always just kind of comes to the table. But it is this is not a typical timeline. And LeBron is still a really good basketball player. Like, watching him every single night, sure, are there moments that he's not getting back on defense, or why is he making that pass? Of course. But there are also a lot of times where he's still very, very effective on the floor. And especially since he came back, he's now at a stage where it feels like his body, his conditioning, all that is connected again. Is there a world when this season ends? Do you think there's, and I'm also kind of, is this talked about in Cavs world a lot, or is it not? Is there a world LeBron decides, hey, if the Lakers don't want me, they don't want to pay me after this year, he's going to be obviously a free agent. Is there a world LeBron says, I want to come back to the Cleveland Cavaliers. I want to announce that this is going to be my final year in the NBA. And it's not like the Cavs don't have a very competitive team, that if he takes whatever money is available to keep that team intact, maybe he can call it a career with the Cleveland Cavaliers and actually compete in the Eastern Conference. How often is that talked about, and is that a crazy scenario that you see?
It's talked about all the time. I think most Cavs fans would tell you, me personally, I'm in the camp of, I would not do any trade for LeBron. The people who are suggesting that we use him as a vehicle to get off long-term money and try to get under the second ape, like, no. There's one avenue to which I think a LeBron James reunion makes sense for both sides. The question I have is, because the Cavs will be a second apron team next year, I think the best thing for LeBron is, if he wants this farewell tour in Cleveland, if it's something that appeals to him, the thing that has to happen that's never happened with LeBron James is for him to willingly take basically a minimum contract at that point. Because when you're a second apron team, you have none of the exceptions available to you. So you're looking at sign and trade avenues, or just being like, you know what? I've made millions upon millions. I'm just going to do this because I want to keep the most competitive team together possible.
And this is how I want to go out. Right? Like, you just
to
go with what you said, right? Like, it's all those scenarios.
Exactly. Yep. But then when you read things like the article, like his comments after the Genie Bus article, and you see him say, there's a certain fatigue of just like, I don't care how people talk about me, that makes me think that perhaps it's not realistic to think that LeBron cares that much at this point in his career about, do I really need that go out because nobody can guarantee it. I mean, we thought we had the best team in the Eastern Conference last year, and we got ran by the Indiana Pacers in the second round in quick decision. It wasn't a particularly close series. So I think there's risk involved with LeBron. It really just has to come down to, is that something that really is meaningful to him? Because I agree with you in the sense of, you're in the Eastern Conference. It should be an easier path. You have a team that's loaded at every position that's not your position. And if you're willing to sacrifice financially on what you take to go there, probably the money you can make off the court for the type of feel-good nature of that story would be insane. I think the only question on the Cavs end is, do you want to risk what you have and what may be the final year of you being able to keep this second apron group together with the unknown of how much does LeBron change that dynamic? Because it's very much Donovan's a little bit above his peers, but there's an equality that comes with Darius's tenure there and the backbone part that Evan and Jarrett have in the defense, that you throw LeBron into that, and who knows, it might change that dynamic entirely. And, I know this sounds crazy. This is LeBron James we're talking about, but people are so irrationally high on Jalen Tyson right now. I think there's some people who are like, let's not submarine more of our young guys when we know this is probably a one-year experience. So.
Well, this is why I asked the question, because I think what I'm trying to get is, what is the pulse from a Cavs fan? Like, does a Cavs fan say, oh my gosh, this would be awesome, this is the way he should go out, he should come back to Cleveland, and oh, by the way, depending on how the Cavs do this year, maybe that equates into it. I'm just using it as an example. Cavs out first round, Cavs out second round. What do you got to
I think
lose?
it's more likely if you go out early. Like,
That's what I mean. Like, what do you got to lose?
Yeah, there's at that point, people will already. I mean, if we go out early in this playoffs, people are going to be wanting to blow up this core anyway. They're going to be wanting to do drastic things. And there's not a Cavs fan in the world who doesn't have some sentimentality towards LeBron James, even if they know there are some negatives that come along with it. If the risk reward is, hey, he's willing to take a minimum deal to come join a group and we don't have to tear this thing apart to get it, who wouldn't do that?
And you were out in the first or second round, that only adds to it, right? Like, and I agree with you. If you told me that the Cavs got to the Eastern Conference Finals and it was a battle versus the Detroit Pistons, I'm just making it up, right? A battle versus the Pistons, and they actually feel like they took steps forward and you know what, let's keep this thing moving. That's a different conversation, but I do think how they finish off this year would, maybe dictate a little bit more of if that makes sense or it doesn't. Okay, that's interesting because I think for most, it's weird sometimes, I think, with Laker fans, but I'll give you my opinion on it. My opinion is, let's see what LeBron can do in this final year, but at some point, you really truly have to start that chapter with Luka. And I don't think you can start that chapter fully unless LeBron's not on the roster. At the absolute minimum, LeBron can't be on the roster, and $52 million is going towards LeBron James at this stage. I mean, as great as Luka is, he has deficiencies. And you have to be very strategic with how you build the team around Luka because he's not prime LeBron who can play both sides of the floor. He's not prime Kobe, and he's not there's certain players that as great as Luka is in some of his assets that he brings to the table, you have to be very strategic when you build around him. So I find it very difficult how they're able to kind of juggle both of those things.
Well, and I think the other thing that's tough as a Lakers person is that LeBron's coming off making $52 million with your squad. So anything, even if you wanted to bring him back, whatever you want to talk him down to, it's going to feel like much more of a sacrifice for him when he knows he just made this with your team. Whereas if he's uprooting his life to change the team altogether, there's no cooked in expectations in that regard to some extent. And I think of it, I equate it with back when Kyrie forced his way out. The Cavs tried to serve both masters when it came to planning for his departure and trying to remain competitive. They took that deal that was focused around Jay Crowder and Isaiah Thomas because it came with that Brooklyn pick everybody thought would be so good. It turned into Colin Sexton, and it didn't work. It didn't work because I think you're in that position where you have Luka there, and the timeline is just so different from where LeBron is. It's hard to hedge that bet and satisfy both parties there to the point where it's like nobody wants to be the team necessarily. Well, I shouldn't say that. I mean, I hear it on LA radio plenty with some of the other shows. Some people would just happily jettison LeBron right now if they could. But I do think it's something you kind of have to handle, with a soft touch, just due to, what he did in his first couple of years there. So.
All right. That is our interview. So I wanted to, we had one more question. It was about the Eastern Conference, but to be honest with you, I think we're good. I think we got the Lakers and the Cavs obviously all ready to go. A lot, obviously, in regards to tonight's game. And then, since I started doing the show, there's a lot of other things going on. So I'm going to jump back in. If you guys have some thoughts you guys want to throw in, feel free to put it in the comments, but let's pop up the tweet here about Giannis, and then let's basically the worst kept secret in the history of the NBA. This is why, if I'm being honest with everybody, again, shout out to Bob Schmidt for coming on and helping us preview the Lakers and the Cavs, but let's spend a little bit of time here on the Giannis stuff. I actually did. Yesterday I talked about this. I said that the Cavs, I said that the Bucks have waited too long, and they should have traded him last summer. And it's just the worst kept secret that everybody knows Giannis is not going to stay in Milwaukee. He's given you every single indication that he's not going to stay in Milwaukee. And then here comes this tweet Shams put out here right as we kind of got the show started. Let me read this to everybody. Two-time MVP Giannis Antetokounmpo is ready for a new home at the February 5th NBA trade deadline or in the offseason, as several rival teams make aggressive offers to the Milwaukee Bucks for him, and the franchise is starting to listen, league sources tell ESPN. Now, Shams went in and got a kind of a longer article on this whole thing. You could find it on ESPN as well, so that's there. I've said this a couple times. I'm kind of sick of the Giannis conversation. I'm sick of the Giannis chat because it's this like breakup that you know is going to happen. It's almost like you're getting together with your friends and your buddy is like, I can't take it anymore with this girl, this, that. It's like, it's going to end. The question is just going to be, when is it going to end? And then I think Giannis didn't help himself as well. I would never ask for a trade. Him booing the Milwaukee Bucks crowd. I mean, just unnecessary drama. Let's kind of fast forward to where we're sitting today. Giannis is going to leave the Bucks. And the Bucks are going to try to get as much as they can, even though they probably could have got a lot more in the summer. Does a trade happen before the February 5th trade deadline, or does it happen in the summer? We'll have to obviously wait and see. How do the Lakers kind of fall into play? What teams are going to be pushing for Giannis Antetokounmpo? How much is Giannis going to be able to dictate where he goes? Is this the point where Giannis is saying, I'm all in, I want to be a New York Knick? Is Giannis coming back and he's saying, guys, there's 3 teams that I would sign an extension for, and if it's not these 3 teams, don't try to trade me there, because if you trade me there, I have a player option, and I could walk away in a year, or in this case, a year and a half. How is Giannis going to play his cards, I think, is really the major question, because the Bucks really do not have that much leverage. They just don't. And if Giannis gives them the opportunity, if Giannis goes back and says there's 3 teams that I would accept to trade with, Miami, New York, and the Lakers, using those 3 teams as an example. Okay, then they got a little bit of leverage. Now you got those teams obviously competing against each other to put together the best package for Giannis Antetokounmpo. The interesting thing with the Lakers that I will say, and I've seen this from a couple of people in the chat, I saw it actually while the interview was being played, but the interesting thing is Giannis, some of his injuries this season, if I'm being completely frank, and I'm not saying that the Lakers shouldn't trade for Giannis Antetokounmpo. Obviously, if you can get your hands on Giannis, it's going to cost you your draft compensation, which they can't give until the summer. So I don't think a trade by the February 5th trade deadline, I don't think that helps the Lakers' chances. I think the Lakers' best chance of getting Giannis will be in the summer, where they have 3 first-rounders they could trade, plus Austin Reeves, and, figure out as best as they can to go put together a package for Giannis Antetokounmpo. But I've seen a couple of people put in the trade, or I've seen a couple of people put in the chat that some of Giannis's injuries and his timetable compared to Luka's timetable, how would that mesh? Are you concerned about Giannis from an injury perspective? He's been in and out of that lineup all season long. So that's just going to be something that kind of comes with the territory if you do trade for Giannis. But clearly for the Lakers, if they're going to put together a real package for Giannis, they can't do it at the deadline. They're going to have to do it in the summer. So we'll see what happens here. But obviously that's a domino that we've been waiting to fall. And for the first time today, it feels like everyone is saying what everybody already knew. Giannis wants out, is open to that discussion. And, obviously they'll figure out what to do from here. So let me actually, I'm going to start looking at some of the comments here as we start this conversation and go from there. And let me read a few of these here. Giannis will age like milk, too much drama and lack of skill. I was saying this to everybody yesterday that we were talking about, it was the Tim McMahon piece that he was saying that, trust me, there's big men that be wanting to do backflips to get a chance to play with Luka as a Los Angeles Laker. I mean, if you're Giannis and you're flirting with different teams out there and the potential of where you can spend the next 4 or 5 years of your career and still have a chance to win an NBA championship, I'm not telling you the Lakers are the only place, because it's not. Obviously, Miami and their history, and sure, Miami's going to make a great case. Maybe you stay in the Eastern Conference and you kind of stay out of that gauntlet, which is the West, where you got to go up against OKC and you got to go up against the San Antonio Spurs and Houston and some of these other teams. But the Lakers would provide Giannis a little bit of what he's looking for here. It's not all going to be on his shoulders. He's going to be playing with another superstar. and Giannis can kind of do what he does. He'll be playing in a big market, new ownership for the Lakers. I think the Lakers check a lot of those boxes, but it'd have to happen in the summer. And who knows where Giannis is headspace-wise. Maybe Giannis is telling himself, no, I want to stay in the Eastern Conference. No, I want a chance to go play with organizations that I feel like have a little bit more things are already established. So how he kind of juggles where he wants to go. But I do think he's going to have all the leverage. I do believe that. All right, let's see what else we have here. Slee. All right, let me see what we got here. Slee at 31, Giannis is injury prone. He's not worth the cost anymore. Listen, I'm not here to tell you that, you're wrong in that. I don't know the answer for that. I just know that Giannis he's had injuries this season. So let's not pretend that Giannis has not had injuries this year, because he clearly has. So we'll see what eventually happens. I think it's just, to me, the more interesting piece of all of this is just the fact that it's finally kind of becoming official. I see some people here putting the San Antonio Spurs. Okay. By the way, there's going to be teams that got real packages if they want to trade for Giannis. And I'm just off the San Antonio would have a real package. OKC would have a real package. New York, I think, has got a decent package. I just don't know if that's what the Bucks are looking for in a rebuild. So there's going to be some teams out there that definitely make a case where they're going to have the type of assets that they're going to need. Slee, can any team offer a better player than AR? I think they can. And I think part of that is going to be, do they want to compete or do they want to rebuild? And maybe there's a little bit more of a rebuild factor in here. And if there is a little bit more of a rebuild factor, then I would say that, do they want Austin Reeves? I mean, the question is what did the Milwaukee Bucks want? And if the Bucks are saying to themselves, we got to kind of start this thing over, then is Austin Reeves the guy that you're like, hey, that's the guy that we want to target and that's the player that we want to go after? I don't know if he's going to be the player. Now, I think Austin Reeves is good. I think Austin Reeves is, obviously having a tremendous all-star caliber type of season, but I don't know what the Milwaukee Bucks want. But I do think that the Milwaukee Bucks, no question about it, are going to want to rebuild. And if they're going to want to do a full rebuild, I don't know how much, of the equation is, hey, Austin Reeves is the guy that they want to rebuild with. John Wayne, the minions work in overtime. You like clips, Lee? Pull up the clip from Ramona Shelburne saying LeBron and Rich didn't tell the Lakers to draft Bronny. Not really sure what this is referencing to. Yeah, I mean, I obviously the Lakers drafted Bronny for a reason, and we know why they drafted Bronny. And that's kind of a separate topic. I'm not really sure what this has to do with this. I mean, I appreciate the super as always, John. I mean, John, you bought maybe a little bit this afternoon. Go get a cup of coffee, and they're going to say, what's your name? I'm going to say John W. Are you sure? You always come in under Allen. Yeah, well, today I'm John W. I'm not sure how this pertains, but I appreciate the super. Okay. Luka might be okay with being second fiddle to Luka. Or I'm sorry, Giannis might be okay with second fiddle to Luka. Yeah, and listen, if I'm being honest with you, I think the best combination of players, the best combination is when on any given night, one of your two stars can be the star. Anthony Davis, LeBron James. I know it was typically Kobe when it was Powell there, but Powell was obviously a monster. Shaq and Kobe. Jayson Tatum, Jaylen Brown. Maybe the Thunder, they had a couple of, it was Jalen Williams or Shea or Chad Holmgren. I think to answer this question that people are putting out there, that I'm going to use this one as an example, the Giannis might be okay. Listen, Giannis is also at the stage of his career. He's like, if I could play with the caliber of a player like Luka Doncic, it makes my life a lot easier. Again, I don't think the Lakers are going to be the leading contender to go get Giannis Antetokounmpo, but it's impossible not to try to tie the two together. But if they're going to be able to put together a real package, it can't happen now. It's going to have to happen in the summer when they got 3 first-rounders. Okay, good stuff right there. A lot of really, really good stuff there. I'm going to try to fit in a few other things that I have here, And I know we're already almost an hour into the show, but I still got a few more topics. So we're just going to have to go on these topics here and keep hitting some of this Lakers content because there's a lot. So appreciate everybody being here, supporting the channel as always. Quick shout out to Brad Wallace and the Wallace firm. Injury attorneys that can help anybody in the state of California. Created the URL, wallacewins.com/Sliwa. If you or a family member, serious injury, wrongful death case, you're not 100%, a car accident, whatever the case is, just go to that website, fill out a free consultation, get with Brad Wallace and the team, let them guide you. That's all. I mean, this messaging, and this is one of the things I love about Brad Wallace, I love about the Wallace firm and our relationship together. There's no really pushing anything. It's just something happens, you need an injury attorney, you're not sure where to start, we got a guy for you. Brad Wallace and the Wallace firm, wallacewins.com/Sliwa. Best injury attorneys in the state of California. They can help anybody in the state of California. He's a loyal, long-term partner and long-term relationship I've had with him. And obviously, this is the second year in a row he follows us independently to be a part of this show on obviously on YouTube. So shout out to Brad Wallace and the Wallace firm. There's the website if you need it. All right. The one thing I kind of love with the partners here, all of them are just like, Al, we just, mix us in organically in the show. It's like, all right, done. Okay, a couple of NBA topics I'm going to get into. They're a little bit more Lakers-centric as well, and then we're going to call it a day. We got a game coming up at 4 o'clock tonight. 4 o'clock, Lakers and the Cavs. So, a lot going on here today. Take a quick breather, stretch, and then come right back on here right after the Lakers take on the Cavs. Okay, a couple things here real quick I'm going to hit on. And I could spend a little bit more time on some of this stuff tomorrow. I'm going to save a couple of these because some of these are a little bit more around the game plan of what the Lakers are going to do and what the strategy is for the Lakers. I'll spend a little bit more time on some of that stuff tomorrow. But here's one thing that I do want to mention, and this is Mark Stein, who's mentioning Dalton Knecht in his Substack, the Stein Line. Highly encourage you guys to go be a part of his Substack. I'm a part of his Substack. Mark Stein does great work. Here's what he said about Dalton Knecht. Another player to watch in terms of possible fresh starts is the Lakers' Dalton Knecht, who was traded to Charlotte a year ago before being forced to return to LA when the Purple and Gold rescinded its deal to acquire Mark Williams from the Hornets. I mean, a lot of Laker fans, I will tell you this, they got their opinions on things and they want to shout in the sky about Dalton Knecht, or they want to shout in the sky about DeAndre Ayton. And they got an opinion about what the Lakers should do with the trade deadline. They got an opinion about this, that, this, and that. You know whose name I haven't heard much of, which tells you a lot? Haven't heard Dalton Knecht's name a lot. You know why? Because I think Lakers there's nothing there. They don't have faith. They know the coaching staff doesn't have faith. They know that the guy needs a fresh start. Frankly, if he got traded tomorrow, nobody would lose sleep. And I'd be rooting for the guy. I would be hoping the best for Dalton Knecht when it comes to that. But there's just nothing there in regards to a Dalton Knecht conversation anymore. You had key players like Gabe Vincent that was out. You had key players, I don't know if you want to say Gabe Vincent. You had key players like Austin Reeves was out. Rui Hachimura was out. There were players that were out, and Lakers were desperate to have guards that can jump in and be a threat from the outside, bring the ball up. You know who the Lakers did not turn to? They didn't turn to Dalton Knecht. So I think this article from, obviously, or this piece from Mark Stein talking about Dalton Knecht, fresh start, kind of a name to keep an eye out for. It makes all the sense in the world. And I don't think the Lakers have really much of a connection. Laker fans have all that much of a connection with Knecht anymore. So that says a lot right there. I won't get too much further into it, but I think that says something in regards to that. I want to play this clip here. I thought there was a really funny clip yesterday that was on LeBron's podcast, and he was interviewing Tyrese Haliburton. Let me play this clip, and then I got one thing on Jayson Tatum that I also want to do. I'll read a couple of comments. We'll call it a day. So, Mind the Game podcast, Tyrese Haliburton's talking about his time with Team USA. I'm a Haliburton fan, and I think for a lot of people out there, It's funny. Every time I bring Tyrese Haliburton up to somebody, they're like, oh my gosh, I love that guy. This, that, what. I mean, it's kind of interesting to kind of watch a guy like Tyrese Haliburton. He's got no association with the Lakers. And a lot of people, I think, were rooting for Tyrese Haliburton last year. Listen to this story that he was telling to LeBron yesterday about USA basketball. I think you guys will like this.
Like, what is he doing? But I saw you. I'm like, oh, I think he's seeing Steph set the back pick for the three. Like, I'm like, that was the coldest moment in my basketball history. Like, to even be involved in that play. But I think there's just so many moments and so many things that I learned. And obviously, I didn't play a ton. And I have a great story. I've never told anybody this story before. So we're at the Olympics. We're in the back doing film before the Olympics start. And before it starts, it's like, all right, we're going to have the team meeting where we acknowledge that all 12 guys cannot play. And so Steve starts talking about everybody can't play. And Bron is talking about how, in the 04 Olympics, I didn't really play that much. And you got to put your pride aside that, it's about bigger than you. And Katie's over there, like, at the end of the day, with 12 All-Stars, everybody's good. We're just trying to win, right? And I'm sitting there and I'm listening. I'm like, yeah. And as we start film, I'm like, but who are they talking about? Like, who are these? And I'm looking around. I'm like, oh, he ain't talking about him. He ain't talking about him. I'm like, oh, they talking about me. I'm sitting there. I'm like, oh, no, this is what it is. I was like, oh, I was sitting there. I'm watching film. I can't even pay attention to film. I'm like, damn. It's over. It's over, man. Oh, I get no PT out here. It's over.
I'm the one guy in the school project.
Like, what?
All right, that's Tyrese Haliburton with LeBron. Easy guy to like. Damn, I wish Tyrese was available for Game 7. But then got injured. But I thought that story was funny as we go through some of the NBA stories. I got one other NBA story I'm going to get into. I'll read a couple of the comments. We're going to call it a day. Jayson Tatum talking yesterday. He was on the Pivot podcast. I don't know if this was yesterday, but I know he was on the Pivot podcast. If or when I do come back this season, they would have played 50-some odd games without me. They have things that have clicked and have been successful. So there's a thought in my head, like, how does that look when I come back? Damn. Do I come back or should I wait? I contemplate it every single day. I could help Jayson Tatum out here very, very easily. If the Boston Celtics got a chance of coming out of the Eastern Conference, they've been one of the more impressive teams in the entire NBA. Second best record in the East. They got to have Tatum. And if they have Tatum, they're probably the favorites to come out. So we'll see what he eventually does, but it kind of shows you the position that the Boston Celtics are in, still having a ton of success. As impressive of a season as anybody's having in the NBA. All right, let's read a couple of these comments, and we're going to call it a day. I appreciate you guys being a part of the show. Let's see what we got here. Slee, does this mean Rob will make no significant moves this trade deadline to wait for Giannis? Honestly, unless he has like a true insider of, I think we got a real chance at Giannis in the offseason. Unless he's got something like that, he still has to kind of operate based off of what they have and the information that he has in front of him. So we'll see what happens there. Giannis is hurt because he's literally carrying the team. If you put him on a team where he has help, he might do better. I don't disagree with that. I think it's a good observation. So I don't think that's a stretch there. Dalton will shine somewhere else. I think the best chance he has is, truthfully, I think the best chance he has is to get traded. And then he could kind of figure out some stuff from there. But that's the best chance that he has, is to end up on another team and see what he can do from there. All right, let me read a couple more comments here, and then we're going to call it a day. Let's see what we got here. I miss Haliburton hoops. I'm telling you, a lot of people were kind of falling into this. Last year, Tyrese Haliburton had one of the best playoff runs I've ever seen. And the Indiana Pacers, it's like out of nowhere, they were taking down the number 1 seed Cleveland Cavaliers. They were taking down the New York Knicks. Then they go up against the Oklahoma City Thunder. They're supposed to have no chance. And a freaking Game 7. If Tyrese doesn't get hurt, I think they beat the Oklahoma City Thunder. And that's how sports works. Nothing you could do about that. But when I saw that clip, I think this is the kind of guy that a lot of people just enjoy watching. And You could tell he's got a good personality. Here's another person. That was a funny ass clip. Yeah, I thought it was a great clip. Okay, let me start kind of closing out the show. I appreciate everybody hanging out here. Lakers got the Cleveland Cavaliers. Obviously, that's coming up a little bit later tonight. It's a 4 p.m. tip-off. So it's a much earlier game than usual. So something just to keep in mind in regards to that. Lakers got a chance. This is another road game. So they're on an 8-game road trip right now. They're 4 games in. They're sitting at 3-1. And they got a chance here to go 4-1 on that road trip. And this is going to be one of the more challenging games that the Lakers have, even though Darius Garland and even though Evan Mobley aren't going to play. Donovan Mitchell is going to ball out. And, the Cavs are just going to be ready to play because it's the Lakers. So it should be a fun game tonight. Right after the game. So I'm going to target probably around 7 o'clock for a post game, between 7 and 7:30, somewhere around there. I want to listen to JJ Redick talk, and then we'll do the post game. I appreciate you guys being a part of the show. Thank you very much for being here. Shout out to Bob Schmidt. That was a part of the show as well with the interview that we did. And thank you to everybody that was hanging out for the entirety of the show. Hope you guys have a great rest of your day. I'll see you guys tonight after the Lakers take on the Cleveland Cavaliers.